You're tuned in to Voiced Thoughts Talk Show and Podcast, a forum where we discuss and explore society-based topics while advocating and providing information and resources to the community through an unscripted, unfiltered, and authentic approach. Listen on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and Apple Music. Watch us on YouTube. Join our Facebook group. Follow us on social media, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at Voiced Thoughts Talk Show and Podcast, your society-based channel. We are live right now with Jenny Hines, running for District Judge 2024 here in McCracken County.
Yes.
How are you?
I'm doing well. A little damp.
Yes, it's
finally raining.
So for those who don't know you, tell me a little bit about your background.
My name is Jenny Hines. I grew up around here, actually in Farley, which is off of exit 11. Went to Reedland for high school, and then I went to Murray State for my undergraduate degree. I've got it hanging up there. And graduated in 2006 with a double major in history and political science. Then I went to UK for law school, graduated there in 2009. While I was there trying to figure out where I wanted to work afterwards, I decided to do ROTC and joined the Air Force. So the day I graduated law school, I got my commission in the United States Air Force.
That's amazing.
It was really awesome. But if you know anything about the military, you can suggest what you'd like to do. And I thought perhaps I would become a JAG officer, but the needs of the Air Force had something else in mind for me. So I had the opportunity to be a security forces officer. So I did nuclear security as well as law enforcement for 4 years.
Oh, wow.
And then once my term was up, I came back to Paducah and started practicing law at this firm, Bell, Stover & Graves, Paducah, Kentucky, and practiced all throughout the state from Paducah to Pikeville. Worked on hundreds of cases, various levels of courts from district court, the circuit court, and also did some appellate work. And speaking of appellate work, so after I did about 6 years of private practice, I then became a case manager and staff attorney for Judge, now Justice Shay Nickel at the Kentucky Court of Appeals. And then after I worked for him for about a year, I went to work for Judge Dixon with the Court of Appeals as one of her staff attorneys.
Oh, wow.
And that was a great experience. I got to see many different areas of the law: civil, criminal, family law, workers' compensation cases. I tell people it's anything you can think of and some stuff that you can't even imagine. Stuff that you're like, how is this a case? But it was a wonderful opportunity. But my boss retired last year, and I came back to private practice at the beginning of this year, where I've worked on over 100 cases this year alone. And it's been a wonderful experience.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. All right. So you're running for McCracken District Judge. What types of cases does a district judge handle?
So the district court in our Kentucky court system kind of looks like a pyramid. You've got the largest volume of cases at the bottom, and each level gets fewer and fewer cases. So the bottom level is the least serious as far as traffic violations, misdemeanors, which are only imprisonable for up to 1 year, small claims courts, probate, guardianship cases, that sort of thing.
Oh, okay. All right. So tell us why do you think you're fit for this position? Why you're running to become McCracken County District Judge?
So the desire to become a judge isn't something that every attorney aspires to do. There's some attorneys that just love litigation or love one aspect of the law or the other. But working for the Kentucky Court of Appeals for the past 6 years, being able to see the impact that our judicial system has on the lives of those in our community and our commonwealth, it just put a yearning in my heart to serve our community in that way. And that's something that I would deeply desire to do.
Thank you so much for sharing. I know we're coming down to crunch time right now, too.
Yes.
Just a few days left, right?
In fact, early voting's already going on today.
Absolutely, yes. Get your umbrellas if you're going out.
Yes.
What is it like to run for judicial office?
So it can be a lot of fun. You meet all sorts of people, and depending on which seat that you're running for, if you run for like a statewide position, you've got, a lot more counties, like 24 counties for our district. But fortunately, this is just one county, McCracken County. There's over 50,000 registered voters in McCracken County. That's a lot of people to meet. I've done my best to go to where the people are. Any organization that will let me speak, I've invited myself. And if they respond back, yes, you can come, I come. But if I don't hear back or hear crickets, I assume that they probably don't want me. So I'm not going to go where I'm not welcome. Although sometimes I have.
Pull up a chair at a table.
Yes. But it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. You just have to be dedicated and make a plan of how you can cover as many different media outlets, because let's face it, in this world, if you're not doing social media, you miss a lot of people. That's how they get their information. You've got to get on TV. You have to get to the radios. You have to be in the newspapers. You need to go out and door knock and go to events and interact with the community and let them see who you are.
Absolutely. So as we're talking about all the things you've done for this campaign, how have you handled the stress of this campaign?
So I like to use the analogy of, some people fly a lot, but everybody's at least seen on the movies or TV where they have the warnings that they do pre-flight, and they say, if there's a sudden loss of cabin pressure, make sure to put on your mask first. So I've been very intentional about putting on my mask first.
I love that analogy.
Well, you just have to. If you don't have the right mental headspace, how can you help someone else? You have to make sure that you're physically healthy as best as you can, emotionally healthy, spiritually healthy, mentally healthy, all of these things. So I've continued to do cardio in a different way. I like to run. Well, as much as anybody can like to run, but I usually do either run or walk on my treadmill. But these days, my cardio has been door hanging and door knocking. And just literally, we did the walk yesterday.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us for that. That means a lot.
That was a wonderful event. And as I said, I hope that grows. But making sure that you're taking care of yourself and your family. You can't just say, okay, kid. I mean, I have a son who's 11 years old. You can't say, okay, Gabe, I'll see you on November 6th. You have to make sure that you're staying connected with those who love you and not shutting them out, and realizing that I'm not He-Man or He-Woman. I can't do everything on my own. It's a team effort. So we have to pull together.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Could you explain what rules a judicial candidate in Kentucky must follow, and why judicial races are different than other public offices?
Okay. Well, I'm very glad you asked. And I have handed in the slideshow that will be made available later. Let's go back to the beginning. Okay. There's me arguing the constitutionality of a statute up in Frankfurt. That was a fun case. And so this is a little crash course. We used to have a little TV show where you would learn how a bill becomes a law. This is kind of like that. In the United States of America, the most important overarching law is our federal law. That trumps everything. That is, the buck stops here. And our primary document is the U.S. Constitution, which includes its amendments, like the First Amendment, which protects freedom of speech, and with other things as well. Then you have rules, regulations, codes, such as the United States Code, Code of Federal Register, and case law, which is how our Supreme Court and the federal courts have interpreted that law. So you got to follow all of these things. And in Kentucky, we have a similar setup. You have the Kentucky Constitution, you have statutes, and you have case law. So judicial races in Kentucky are nonpartisan. What does that even mean? Section 117 says that justices and judges at every level of our court shall be elected from their respective districts or circuits on a nonpartisan basis as provided by law. So, like whenever you have the presidential race, you've got your candidates that are from one party or another, or even third parties. Like obviously, we all know that Trump is a Republican guy and Harris is the Democratic woman. So they have a D or an R behind their name. If you vote straight ticket for one party or the other, they're the ones who get the vote. In a nonpartisan election, if you just vote straight ticket, you don't vote for any of the nonpartisan positions, such as mine or the Court of Appeals judge, or if you happen to live in the city, you won't vote for the mayor, you won't vote for the city council if you just do a straight ticket and leave, and you won't vote for the constitutional amendments. Then, as a judicial candidate, we have even more strict rules than other nonpartisan candidates. We have to follow the Kentucky Code of Judicial Conduct, which you can find that in Kentucky Supreme Court Rule 4.300. And our Code of Judicial Conduct has been written and rewritten several times over the years. One of the latest versions of it was found unconstitutional by a federal court, so they had to rewrite it so that it would comport more closely to our First Amendment, remember the Constitution. So that's what we've got here. And our current Code of Judicial Conduct consists of 4 canons. Each one of those has numbered rules underneath it and comments that follow those rules that generally explain it. And the canons state overarching principles of judicial ethics that all judges must observe, although a judge may only be disciplined for violating a rule.
You know what I love about this show? It's informational.
Yes.
So somebody listening or watching can learn something.
Right.
I'm learning as well, providing those resources. So I appreciate you for doing that. All right.
And so, for those of you who might get lost in the weeds, I know that you said that Evergreens is our season sponsor. This might be a good time to hop over there and get a coffee.
Yes, true
That way you don't fall asleep.
Your opponent recently posted part of a judicial ethics opinion, and I know that's kind of like all over Facebook as well, saying no endorsements from partisan elected officials, no exceptions. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, let's just see what the rule says. So this is the rule. It's underneath Canon 4, and Canon 4 has a long title, but I've highlighted the most important of that. This canon is to be interpreted consistent with the First Amendment to the United States Constitution. Remember back earlier when I was explaining we have our U.S. Constitution is our most important document that we must follow, then Kentucky, then these rules. So you're not going to have something unconstitutional stand. The rule itself says, except as permitted by law, with an asterisk, or by the rules, a judge or judicial candidate shall not seek, accept, or use endorsements from a political organization. And I've highlighted political organization. Political organization, as defined by the Code of Judicial Conduct, means a political party or other group. It does not anywhere in this definition or the rule say a person. And then here's the comment to that. And basically, it says it cites this case from 2016, which in response they had to rewrite the Code of Judicial Conduct to make it comport to it. Kentucky has a right to prevent candidates from identifying themselves as the nominee of a political party or judicial seat. That's right. But it also says candidates remain free to announce their party affiliation. So as a judicial candidate, you can say, I'm registered as this, that, or the other thing. You're allowed to do that. And a judge or judicial candidate is not required to disavow an endorsement. So if anybody or any organization endorses me, I'm not required to correct the record on that or say, I don't want it. I don't have to do that. Okay. Then the next rule, so the rule we were just looking at was found in Kentucky Supreme Court Rule 4.300. The next rule deals with what the Judicial Ethics Committee and their opinions are, and that's Kentucky Supreme Court Rule 4.310. And the first bill just says what it's comprised of. So this is not the Supreme Court that writes these ethics opinions. It's a group of a few judges and 2 members of the bar. And it specifically says under subsection 3, both formal and informal opinions, meaning the judicial ethics opinions, shall be advisory only. They are not the law. In fact, there are currently 131 ethics opinions that are online, and at least 90 of the 131 have been identified on their face as incorrect, unpublished, or caution is advised when following them. So Kentucky and federal courts are the ultimate authority on the correct interpretation of the law. not these judicial ethics opinions.
Wow.
And this is the ethics opinion, a copy of the one that my opponent has cited. And the composition of the committee, I believe, is significant because it includes Judge Williams. And the dates are significant because of subsequent cases that have effectually gutted this opinion. So this one was written or published April 8th of 2022 and corrected on July 18th of 2022. So Judge Williams ran against our current Court of Appeals judge, Chris McNeil, and he was actually endorsed by a judge executive, as well as retired Justice Bill Cunningham and 4 sheriffs. So these slides show copies of that. And I believe that might be why she wrote the opinion the way that she did, or at least allowed it to be written that way. So the question that was asked is, may a judicial campaign committee advertise endorsements from an elected partisan official? And their answer was no. But it cites as its authority Rule 4.1A7, which we just read, which didn't say that, Judicial Ethics Opinion 66, which we'll talk about in a moment, Winter versus Wolznick, which was the case that was cited in comment 10, as well as comment 10. And none of the 3 things that we've just looked at support this answer. Oh, and this is that slide a little bit bigger.
Okay. Yeah, so definitely send those to me. I'll add them in if you want to.
Perfect. And then this is another question. So this particular ethics opinion didn't just answer one question. It answered several. And then this one is just about the use of symbols associated with the party, such as the elephant, donkey, or what have you. And they answered that, no, you can't use that, which is also wrong. Okay, this is the rationale for that opinion. So it specifically relies on the rule and the comment, and it says that they provide that an endorsement of a judicial candidate by a partisan public official is almost the same as a judicial candidate campaigning as the official nominee of a particular party. That's not what it said. And then it also says that it relies on Judicial Ethics Opinion 66, question 1. It says the same reasoning that requires a judicial candidate not to employ partisan symbols in his or her campaign literature, such as the elephant or donkey. It interjects an impermissible partisan character into the judicial campaign. So that's just not true. And then at the end of the opinion, it says, please be aware that opinions issued by or on behalf of the committee are restricted to the content and scope of the canon of judicial ethics and legal authority interpreting the canons. The fact situation on which an opinion is based may be affected by other laws, such as the Constitution, or regulations. And it also says that their opinions are subject to review by the Kentucky Supreme Court at any time. So that this basically says, don't trust this for anything except for what is right here. And even then, they got it wrong. So this is Judicial Ethics Opinion 66, for which it relies on. And this was underneath the former set of rules. So this was underneath the unconstitutional set. So the current canon is 5A1B, caution is advised. And this is what the court put on here. Valid except response to question 1, Kerry versus Wolznick. So the thing that it relied on is already stamped that you're not supposed to follow that. And then this is Judicial Ethics Opinion 124, which was issued after 66. And it basically says that 66 and 30 and 93 carry with them a note of caution or disavowal. And it also says that the Judicial Ethics Commission is not empowered to render opinions that go beyond the mandates and verbiage of the Kentucky Code of Judicial Conduct, applicable statutes in the Kentucky Constitution. So the Ethics Commission doesn't get to write the rules. They have to follow them, and they didn't. Now, this is the case that also says that judicial ethics opinion, not directly, but it shows that 130 is also incorrect. It was issued after then. It was issued in October 28th of 2022. So remember, that other one was issued in April, corrected in July. This happened in October. And it deals with the same rule. So I'm not going to beat a dead horse here, but basically it just reiterates what I've just been saying. And candidates have a constitutional right to portray themselves as a member of a political party. And then it says, simply put, the First Amendment doesn't allow the commission to ban animal symbols just because they happen to be closely associated with political parties. So, and this is kind of a funny slide because it says you can use an elephant, or a man, an elephant, a donkey, a man riding an elephant, or an elephant dancing with a donkey, should you choose.
Is it permissible for a judicial candidate to have signs and literature at a political party's headquarters?
Yes, it is. And even though I've just cautioned that you shouldn't be relying on these judicial ethics opinions because they usually get it wrong, this one was issued in 2006, and it was underneath the more stringent version of the rules. And even then, when it was more stringent, it said, yes, a judicial candidate should be careful to avoid giving the appearance of soliciting a public endorsement, but nothing in Canon 5 prohibits a candidate's campaign committee from distributing campaign literature to various political parties and public officials who request them in the hope that the materials will be distributed. So if I bring my signs to any political headquarters, well, or my committee does rather, or literature, that's okay. And I know that people get confused on that, but it is allowable.
All right. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Are there any judicial rules that you would like to discuss specifically?
Yeah, so I think the most important one that somehow hasn't been mentioned in this campaign is a judge's and judicial candidate's duty to be honest. So in the very preamble before these rules, it says judges should maintain the dignity of the judicial office at all times and avoid both impropriety and the appearance of impropriety in their professional and personal lives. They should aspire at all times to conduct that ensures the greatest possible public confidence in their independence, impartiality, integrity, and competence. And integrity means probity, fairness, honesty, uprightness, and soundness of character. So by putting that JE 130 is the law and insinuating that I'm breaking it, I believe that that's dishonest. And also, other things too. But as I said, I won't try to poke my opponent in the eye. I don't think that that's good form, but I have practiced in hundreds of cases over the state. I've had a very busy career over the past 13 years. The first 2 years that I was here at Belstofer and Graves, I was pregnant and gave birth to a son, but I was still the top 3 biller in our firm, only behind Eddie Jones and Rick Walter, who are complete beasts. And I don't even know how human beings can do what they do, but they're amazing. But I'm a hard worker too, and I want to be a hard worker as a judge.
Thank you so much for sharing that. What skills or abilities do you think you have to make a good district court judge? And what sets you apart?
So because I have seen district courts in different areas of the state, I've had the opportunity and privilege to see how many different courts function, and over the past decade plus, and things have changed, and I've seen what works well and what works less well. And one thing that Justice Nickel taught me is, especially at the upper levels, you have time to chew your meat, and we need to get the right results for the right reasons, and it's best to get it right the first time. So if you have somebody who comes into your court and they've appear to be in your court often for the same thing, maybe taking the extra minute or two or however long it takes to figure out what's causing this. Is there maybe a substance abuse issue or a mental health issue or something else that's causing this to happen? because otherwise they're just going to keep coming back. You actually save judicial resources and do what's right for that individual in our community by trying to get to the root of that. I also feel like because I am so passionate about our judicial system, I don't want to treat it as an 8:30 to 4:30 job or whatever hours that a normal district court judge keeps these days. I want to add value. And I feel like we have some great programs with our drug court and mental health court, but I'd like to do something, especially for our youth. We used to have a program called Teen Court. And even though that's not an option at the moment, there are alternative means to justice that will take these young men and women and say, hey, look, this isn't the path that I want to choose as a career. There's a better way, and helping them out on the front end. And also, as a veteran, I think that it's important that we look at our veteran population.
Absolutely.
There are counties in our state that have a veterans court, and I would love to help get that started. But one thing at a time. We don't want to spread ourselves too thin. There are only X amount of hours in the day, but these are things that hopefully, if elected and reelected, that I would be able to help implement and get going in our county.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Do you have any ideas on how we can improve our district court?
At the moment, there are a few small tweaks that I would like to implement, but in the military, I learned that you don't just charge in on day one and turn everything on its head. You just have to use what I call an OODA loop, where you observe, orient, decide, and then act. So you see what's working well, what's working less well, and make it work better. One thing that I would like to do is particular in the probate court, because that's one of the areas that's near and dear to me, is being able to, instead of sitting up on the bench, bring it back to the counsel's table, like they used to have it when Judge Kitchen and Judge Hallwell ran it. Not necessarily wearing a robe, but just being able to speak closer to someone. That way they don't feel like they're in trouble. It's not their fault that a loved one has passed away. Being able to navigate them through that process where they can hear and understand clearly, and also obtaining a printer, because we used to be able to sign the order, have it entered, and the executor could walk out with the piece of paper that they needed to go ahead and get the ball rolling for the estate. So things like that, as well as making sure that whenever you're making the announcements at the beginning of court, that you speak clearly and loudly enough for everyone to understand, that you see if anybody needs an assistive hearing device. I know being a security forces officer, they give you an automatic 20% hearing disability if you choose to take it, because a lot of us have been exposed to loud noises. I mean, think about the kids these days with their earphones in all the time, how that damages your hearing. If you can't hear what's being said in court, how are you going to understand it? Also, we're getting a lot more people in our county that don't necessarily speak English as a first language. So just asking at the beginning of court if someone needs a translator, that's crucial. And once again, I'd rather fix that on the front end to find out you need a translator instead of someone sitting through the whole docket call and at the end of court finding out, oh, I already called and decided on his case or her case. Just a few things like that to start with.
Those were very interesting addition and improvements. I have a final question for you. Is there anything else that you'd like to tell those who are watching, voters, about this election? There's a few days left. So
yes. So big thing is early voting, no excuse voting has already started. So you can vote today, you can vote tomorrow, you can vote Saturday, and you can vote on election day. And you can vote at the courthouse, or we have a second location that you can vote at now at WKCTC in Hall's Auditorium. And so that's nice to have two different places to go, especially on a rainy day like today,
two different parts of town as well,
where you don't want to have to stand out in the rain or wind your way through the bellies of the courthouse and wait a long time to cast your vote, because your vote does matter. This is important. All of the elections on the ballot are important, and I encourage people to get involved in the process. I don't feel like what you choose doesn't matter, because it does. It certainly does. And this is a nonpartisan, as I mentioned, election. So if you vote straight ticket, you won't vote for me or my opponent. So please find the name that you like. I hope that it's Jenny Hines, but that's me. So bubble it in all the way, and just, I appreciate it.
No, well, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to talk with me today and share this information as well with the public and my audience. Again, we talked about judicial ethics with Jenny Hines, again, for McCracken County District Judge. I appreciate you for taking the time as well to explain, the questions I had for you today. So once again, we wish you all the best.
Thank you.
And thank you again for taking your time out. I've been your host, and my name is Danette Mahabeer-Turner. I will see you on the next episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in.